Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I got a question from a viewer today that is one that I get probably once or twice a month regarding how do you compete in a tournament without forward-facing sonar? Meaning, what are some things that you can do to give yourself a shot to have a good tournament finish if you're not using forward-facing sonar? And this is something that it's a weird question because right now the assumption is you can't compete at all without it. But the reality is you can definitely still do very well, especially in a five fish format, because you only need 5 bites under that scenario to do well, and the assumption is that you can't do well without it. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, I almost won the Angler of the Year title on the MLF Invitationals in 2023. I finished third overall, but I was leading it after the first day of the last tournament of the year, and I ended up winning that tournament and missing AOI by only a couple of spots. And I think I caught 2 or 3 fish that entire season that were forward-facing sonar related fish, and none of them were actually fish that were like a huge game changer. They were probably my fourth or fifth best fish of the day that I caught them. So, in my opinion, you can absolutely compete without it. Now, it is a tool and it is something that if you have available to you and you know how to use it, it opens up a lot more options to you, meaning those suspended fish are available, or a lot of the targets that you maybe normally wouldn't make a cast at are targets that you see now because of forward-facing sonar. The reality, though, is if you're using either a 360 type unit or you're using side imaging, you can still see those targets. You just have to set up your electronics in a different manner. So what I want to stress to you is you don't have to have it to compete. Now, really what it does is it takes out a lot of those suspended moving fish that are offshore that you normally wouldn't be able to target unless you had forward-facing sonar. But the reality is you can still catch 5 big fish doing other things. You just got to start thinking. You got to almost just block that out of your mind, and a lot of it is a confidence thing. So if you're an angler that doesn't have it, don't go on the water thinking that you're not competing for the win because you don't have forward-facing sonar. Yes, you definitely could be hurting yourself on some bodies of water. If you happen to be fishing Lake St. Clair, the guys who are using it are going to be catching more fish than you're catching. Doesn't mean you won't catch the 5 right fish, but they're going to be catching more fish because they can be that much more, they're that much more efficient on the water. But if you're on a lot of fisheries where your forward-facing sonar isn't a major player or isn't as impactful, places like river fisheries or shallow water grass fisheries, um, from that standpoint, you don't have to have it to compete. What you need to do, though, is you need to go out and still try to identify those best patterns to catch your best fish. If you don't have it, you're going to be looking to fish your isolated targets. You're going to be fishing your drop offs, your shell beds. These are all things that you can find, or you do still find, without forward facing sonar. The other thing I would recommend is fishing baits that tend to generate better strikes. So if you're maybe you're fishing a jig, maybe you're fishing top waters. I'm not necessarily saying you have to fish a glide bait all day long. Although if you get 5 fish on a glide bait, you got a good bag most likely. But you want to be fishing baits that tend to have better than average size. So for me, like a lot of the fish I caught in 2023 were vibrating jig fish, topwater fish. I won the tournament on a Max Scent General, which is always a great bait for catching big fish, your soft stick baits. It was just one of those years where, I caught a lot of fish on crankbait. Crankbait's a great bait too to catch better than average size fish. So, what I would say is a lot of times your shaky heads, your drop shots, those aren't necessarily those are more number style baits, but they're not necessarily your better quality fish baits. But honestly, more than anything, it is such a mindset. People just assume you can't compete now with it, but you absolutely can. But you need the stress. You need to be looking for the fish that you can target without forward facing sonar. And you, in my opinion, want to go back to kind of really emphasizing on the things that you can do to help you win a tournament. So pre-fishing is critical. Shaking fish off, in my opinion, is critical, or not catching the fish. So, maybe you're fishing without hooks, um, and looking for fish that you think you can retarget. So a lot of that could be, maybe you're fishing a frog and you're going out finding places that get frog blowups. Maybe you're flipping a jig into laydowns, trying to determine those patterns. But as long as you understand like the seasonal movements of fish, you're going to probably be able to put yourself in position to have a shot at some of those better quality fish. If you happen to be fishing during the spawn period and you're on the tail end, and most of your fish that are up shallow are probably going to be your males, maybe you want to try to figure out a way to catch some of those post spawn females. If you're fishing in June and you're on a Tennessee River body of water, your ledges are probably going to be where you want to be to win that event. So you want to put yourself in a position where those best fish are. But it's frustrating to me when I hear people say you just can't compete without forward facing sonar, because not only do I feel like I can compete without it, and I use it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to limit myself in the tournaments, but in situations where I'm not glued to it, and maybe that's one of my problems with forward facing sonar is I don't commit 100% to it. But the reality is, like, there are things that I think can still produce really good quality fish, and if you happen to get 5 of the right bites, you can win the tournament without forward facing sonar. In fact, I would say forward facing sonar is much more impactful on a multi-fish derby than a 5-fish derby. Um, and it's interesting to me because there are definitely a lot of anglers that have not done well over the last couple of years, but I would be willing to argue that that's based on them changing and trying to adapt to forward-facing sonar than fishing their strengths. So that's, my 2 cents on this. There's not like this key, what do you gotta go do? Well, you go fish. I mean, 4 years ago, we didn't have forward-facing sonar anywhere near where it is, and nobody had any issue going out and trying to catch fish. And now that we have it here, everyone assumes you can't go back and do what you were doing before. That stuff still works. You might not be around the number of fish that somebody else is around, but you can still be around the quality. So I just want you to have the confidence to go out and catch them, regardless of whether you have forward-facing sonar or not. I think there's a lot of people that aren't signing up for tournaments because they don't think they can compete because they don't have it. And yes, some lakes, that's probably true. A lot of lakes, it's not true at all. In fact, there's a lot of places I still feel like you go in the country where there aren't nearly as many guys that have it, uh, that don't have it. And that just happens to be, again, the type of bodies of water that are in their area. Uh, so yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I just wouldn't try to go fish for the fish that the guys that are scoping are fishing for, because you don't have that ability. Go concentrate on seasonal movements, concentrate on where you think the better than average size fish are, and use baits that generate better than average size fish, and you'll compete just fine in the tournaments that you're fishing. It's a frustrating topic for me. You can compete. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.